Imagine living next door to a millionaire and never realizing it. He drove a 15-year-old Toyota Corolla. He wore the same old jacket every winter. He cut his own lawn every Saturday morning and never took expensive vacations. If you walked past him on the street, you probably wouldn't even look twice. His neighbors assumed he was just another middle-class guy trying to get by. His coworkers joked that he was cheap. Some people even felt sorry for him. But when he retired after 40 years of work, everyone discovered something unbelievable. The quiet man who never looked rich had built a net worth of over $2 million. No lottery ticket, no inheritance, no tech startup, no six-figure Wall Street job. Just a lifetime of small decisions that almost nobody noticed. And his story reveals one of the biggest lies people believe about money. Because the people who look rich are often the ones who aren't. Let's call him Michael. Michael lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood somewhere in America. His house was small but clean. His car was old but reliable. His clothes were simple, practical, and usually a few years out of fashion. Every weekday, he woke up at 6 in the morning, made coffee at home, packed his lunch in a reusable container, and drove to work. He wasn't a CEO. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a celebrity. He was an engineer at a local manufacturing company. He earned a good salary, but nothing extraordinary. Over the course of his career, many of his coworkers actually earned more than he did. Yet Michael had a habit that confused everyone around him. He never seemed interested in impressing anybody. When people upgraded to luxury SUVs, he kept driving his old Corolla. When his neighbors renovated their kitchens, he fixed things himself. When coworkers bragged about expensive vacations, Michael quietly smiled and asked how their families were doing. To most people, he looked ordinary, maybe even boring. But what nobody realized was that Michael had stopped trying to look wealthy a long time ago. He had decided that he would rather become wealthy instead. Every month, on the same day, Michael did something almost nobody knew about. A portion of his paycheck disappeared. Not into a luxury car payment, not into designer clothes, not into expensive hobbies. It went directly into investments. He wasn't trying to get rich overnight. He didn't trade options. He didn't chase cryptocurrency trends. He didn't spend hours predicting the stock market. Instead, he bought simple, low-cost index funds. Every month, every year, no matter what the headline said. When the market crashed, he kept buying. When everyone else got excited during a bull market, he kept buying. When coworkers said investing was too risky, he quietly kept buying. Because Michael understood something most people never do. Wealth isn't usually created in dramatic moments. It's created through boring habits, repeated for decades. At work, Michael had a friend named Jason. Jason was smart, ambitious, and earned almost exactly the same salary. But their lives looked completely different. Every promotion Jason received immediately turned into a bigger lifestyle, a newer car, a larger house, more expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, the latest phone, the latest watch. After all, that was the reward for working hard, right? Meanwhile, Michael's life barely changed. His raises didn't fund bigger spending. They funded bigger investments. Jason often joked about it. "Come on, Mike," he'd laugh. "You only live once." And maybe Jason was right. But 25 years later, something interesting happened. Jason looked rich. Michael actually was. One had spent decades buying things that lost value. The other had spent decades buying assets that quietly grew while he slept. The difference wasn't intelligence, it wasn't luck, it was patience. Here's something strange about modern life. The average person doesn't just buy things because they need them. They buy things because they send a message. The car says you're successful. The house says you've made it. The watch says you're important. The vacation photos say your life is exciting. Social media made this even worse. Every day, millions of people compare their real lives to someone else's highlight reel. What they don't see are the credit card bills, the car loans, the home equity debt, the stress. Research has shown that many households with high incomes actually save very little. Their money arrives and immediately leaves. The truth is, looking rich is often incredibly expensive. Because every dollar spent proving you have money is one less dollar actually building wealth. Michael understood that attention and wealth are often opposites. The more you need people to think you're successful, the harder it becomes to quietly become successful. To most people, Michael's life wasn't exciting. He packed lunch instead of ordering takeout. He repaired things instead of replacing them. He stayed in the same modest house for years. He drove a car that had long since stopped impressing anyone. But while everyone else focused on appearances, something invisible was happening. Compound interest was working. The money he invested at 25 kept growing at 35. The investments from 35 kept growing at 45. And by the time he reached retirement age, those quiet monthly deposits had transformed into something extraordinary. People love stories about overnight millionaires, but the truth is far less dramatic. Most millionaires don't wake up rich. They slowly become rich while everyone else is paying attention to something else. That's why researchers who studied self-made millionaires found a surprising pattern. Many of them lived in ordinary neighborhoods, drove ordinary cars, and spent far less than they could afford. The biggest secret about wealth is that it usually tries not to be seen. When Michael finally retired, his company organized a small farewell gathering. Nothing fancy, just coffee, cake, and speeches from coworkers who had known him for decades. People described him the same way they always had. Quiet, reliable, hardworking, simple. A few weeks later, one of his closest coworkers met him for lunch. During the conversation, Michael casually mentioned that he had crossed the $2 million mark several years earlier and had simply kept investing. At first, his friend thought he was joking, but he wasn't. By the end of his career, Michael's investment accounts, retirement savings, and paid-off home had quietly grown into a net worth of more than $2 million. The news spread through old coworkers and neighbors. People were shocked. How could the man with the old Toyota have more money than the guy with the luxury SUV? How could the quiet engineer be wealthier than business owners and managers? The answer was almost disappointingly simple. He spent less than he earned. He invested the difference. And he gave enough time to work. Most people think becoming wealthy starts with earning more money. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the better question is this: what happens to the money you already earn? Because the man who secretly built $2 million wasn't extraordinary. He didn't have special information. He didn't predict the next big stock. He didn't win the lottery. He simply stopped trying to look rich. And in a world where everyone is competing for attention, status, and appearances, that might be one of the rarest financial decisions a person can make. So the next time you see someone driving an old car, living in a modest house, or quietly going about their day without showing off, remember this story. Because the millionaire next door probably doesn't look like the millionaire you imagined. And maybe the person you're trying to impress today is quietly trying to become the person they'll thank 20 years from now. Because in the end, real wealth isn't about having the loudest lifestyle. It's about having the freedom to live life on your own terms. And the people who master that lesson usually don't need anyone else to know they're rich.